Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is the Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, Sinatra shows us what it's like to be with the cops in this hard-boiled crime thriller, The Detective.
My God, I think I'm going to be sick.
No, you're not. You're going to tense your muscles and get out the notebook. Male, Caucasian, lying nude on floor. Left side of skull crushed. Cuts on face and chest. Fingers shredded.
Roderick Thorpe's #1 bestseller, a literary guild selection. Now, an adult powerhouse on the screen. Your Joe Leland, detective, prowling a city sick with violence, full of junkies, prostitutes, and perverts.
Okay, Andy, before we dig in to the movie itself, let's do just a very brief series recap. What are we doing?
All right, so we are doing our 1968 crime series because of this overarching celebration of 50th anniversaries that we're doing through the second half of 2018. And we thought it'd be fun to do a crime series, and we put up a list of crime films for all of our Patreon listeners to vote on. This was one of the 4 that was selected, And I don't know if people knew anything about it or if they just knew that, hey, it's Sinatra. That'd be an interesting one to try out. Or because we talked about Die Hard on the show and we referenced the fact that this was, in fact, based on the book that was I guess you could say, the book that came out before the book that Die Hard was based on. And maybe that's why people voted on it. I don't know. But this was one of the 4 that was picked.
You know, I'll take it because I really enjoyed this movie, Andy.
I knew nothing about it and was so thrilled with what it was because it was so not expected. And I think looking at the series recap and just getting a sense of the movies that we picked and kind of the context and how they fit in. Is it worth looking at this film 50 years later as opposed to Coogan's Bluff, for example? Absolutely. This was a really interesting film that looked at how homosexuality was viewed back in society 50 years ago and how the police dealt with it, how society dealt with it. And it's a film that is worth revisiting.
Well, not just homosexuality, but use of force, police brutality, the way, investigations, dirty investigations, clean investigations. What does it look like to have a police officer that is, trying to be clean in an environment that is, so obviously dirty? It is dealing with a lot of issues like Targets that are still resonant today. We are still having these conversations. Whatever we are talking about, whatever the counter case is, we're still talking about all of these things today in this movie. And I cannot believe that I had never seen this movie, and B, Frank Sinatra is the vessel for the kind of conversations that are going on in this movie. I can't believe it.
I knew that Sinatra had been in good movies. I mean, we talked about Ocean's 11 on this show, which I think fairly ranked at the bottom of the list of our Ocean's films. It just wasn't a great or fun experience. But I know that he had been in From Here to Eternity and won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for his performance there. Even if people said that it was because of his connections and all that sort of thing, I thought he did a great job in that film. And I think he has shown in other projects that he can be a great actor. It's just, I don't think people, maybe at least our generation, really ever thought of him that way, because in my head, he was so tied directly to the Rat Pack and everything that they had done. And I just didn't ever think of him as an actor who was in films like this.
No, absolutely not. And films like this that deal not just with, all the cops and crime stuff, but relationships and sex and, what it means to have, and divorce, right? In the 60s, divorce, tackling all those sort of relationship, moral relationship issues that we've seen challenged so much since then. But digging into the film a little bit, I have to say, not only all of the cultural issues and the topical stuff going on in this movie, but the film looks amazing.
It was a remarkable difference going from Targets, which had a great indie look that still was doing some interesting things with the camera work, to Coogan's Bluff, which was about as bland and flat as you could get, to this film, which really surprised me consistently, from the opening shot to the flashbacks to the conversations within the flashbacks between Sinatra's character and Lee Remick's character, Joe and Karen, to just a lot of interesting setups of the camera and positioning all the way through. It was a beautiful film with a beautiful use of lighting and camera position and editing. I was just completely impressed constantly as I watched this movie.
I want to get your thoughts on the flashbacks themselves, because the flashbacks, as I'm watching them, the feeling I'm getting is, wow, this is a movie that it almost exists in flashback. Did you get that feeling?
Well,
there's a lot of flashback.
There's 2 flashbacks, and they're lengthy flashbacks. The first one is 14 minutes, and the second one's 10 minutes. Yeah, they make up basically a quarter of the film when you add them up. It was an interesting structure, and apparently the book is rather meandering, the way that it kind of moves through Joe's life and everything. And so I guess to that extent, maybe Abby Mann, who wrote the script, was trying to kind of use that a little bit, the way that he threw these flashbacks in. I liked the flashbacks. I liked what they brought to the story, namely the relationship between Joe and Karen, which I really did enjoy that relationship a lot. And it was a very complex adult relationship, and I loved that about it. But yeah, it was a very interesting structure to go into these flashbacks. And then within these flashbacks, and I think outside of the flashbacks too, almost every time Joe and Karen are having a conversation, it jumps into this new way of viewing the conversation, where each of them is talking directly into the lens. And initially it was off-putting, because it just all of a sudden, I'm like, why are they looking right at me all of a sudden? And
that was very strange. It was probing, especially Lee Remick. I mean, she was in my soul.
And that was okay. I was totally
really
okay
wasn't
with
the
that.
worst. Yeah. Will this flashback please never end? Please.
Just keep smiling at me, Lee. No, it was a really fascinating way to do that. And I don't know if it worked 100% for me. It was a little off-putting and peculiar, but I will say I was completely impressed that Gordon Douglas tried something unique with this film and within the language of the film that made it stand out for me.
And I want to say about their relationship specifically, I really enjoyed watching this movie. I have not read the book, but obviously we talked about Die Hard, and I had just reread the book Nothing Lasts Forever, that was based on, which came out in 1979, right? And this book, The Detective, came out in 1966. I found it really rewarding to go back in time and see their relationship form and fall apart. That was ultimately continued in Nothing Lasts Forever. I don't know if any of the books that he had written in between The Detective and Nothing Lasts Forever are books about Joe, but I really enjoyed the sort of bookend that we got on this one, and the way they use the flashbacks to tell the story of their relationship coming together while we watch present day, the very strange dynamic that it had sort of evolved into.
Yeah, I think both of the books obviously went through a different adaptation process that resulted in different films. I think from what I read, this film is closer to the book, although still quite a number of differences. I think that Joe and Colin McIver, who is kind of our principal character, he's investigating his suicide, or was it a murder, in the second half. They were actually in the same army unit, and I think there's more involving like his father, or more, his father was really big, and I think he was a little younger, at least written younger, or maybe it's just that Sinatra is just might have been a little too old to be playing it. But still, I think the story largely is a lot more similar between the book and this film than Die Hard was with its film.
Well, and Die Hard, Nothing Lasts Forever focuses not centrally on the wife like Die Hard the movie did, right? We get a little bit of Karen, but it's the object of his heroism is his daughter. Right. In Nothing Lasts Forever. So we don't get quite as much, but you kind of understand more clearly why, as the emotional connection comes from the detective. And to clarify, Nothing Lasts Forever is the direct sequel to The Detective. And no, there weren't any Joe Leland books in between our Detective Joe Leland and John McClane.
But I mean, he was Joe Leland in the book, right?
Yes, he was Joe Leland in the book. What do you think about when you take the names away? Let's just look at the characters as Sinatra portrays this character of this particular detective, compared to how Bruce Willis portrays the character in Die Hard. Knowing now that those are the same, or the DNA of those guys are supposed to be the same guy. What's your sense? Did they do a pretty good job?
Well, I think he's got the same sense of I don't want to say isolation within the department, but he certainly kind of acts as a man alone. Like he's doing his thing. And I mean, he's got some great lines in this movie, like, hey, live and let live, or it's not my bag, or whatever. Yeah. Where everybody, he's very much like, everybody's got their thing. I'm just trying to deal with mine. And I loved that attitude. And I could see a little bit of that spilling over into the John McClane character. And just the way that he had his relationship, it was a little abrasive with his superiors, because he was trying to get things done. And if he had to do it his way, then he would. And obviously the big difference is, he's turning in his badge here at the end, which obviously isn't going to work if we're calling Die Hard the sequel to this, because he's back in the force.
Yeah, and I don't think Die Hard would have taken on a topic like this one, right? I think that in the act of modernizing a Joe Leland story, they ended up sanitizing a bit of it culturally. But I'll tell you, when I think about that conversation on the roof, the John McClane Hans Gruber conversation on the roof, I could see Sinatra pulling that off. I could see that same kind of bravado. I could see that same sort of, staring danger in the eye and playing the part character. And I find that really satisfying.
Well, I can't remember because it's not, there's a little bit of a plot difference in Nothing Lasts Forever. The detective, I feel, is actually real timely with what's going on in society,
right?
In 1966, and then in the film 1968, as far as just the way that homosexuality and just the rise of different cultures and different people, it's really kind of coming up. We've got hippies, we've got black rights movements, we've got just all sorts of like students protesting and homosexuals. We've got the Stonewall riots a year after this film comes out. It's a very divisive time within the country. And I think the book is taking a really interesting look at kind of everything that's happening through a policeman's eyes, a detective's eyes. And I find that very interesting. And I don't know if, do you recall if Nothing Lasts Forever is doing any of that for what would be 79, like, gas crisis, things happening in...
Well, very, very much, dealing with a lot of those issues, because, it's not the Nakatomi Plaza. It's not this big tech company. It's an oil company. He's stuck in an oil corporation headquarters. And so, it very much deals with, the issues of the day, dealing with oil and refining and the company that, is ending up, in the perspective of the novel, ending up poisoning, an economy as a result of their work. So
it's still kind of the terrorists are trying to, kind of, it's not so much stealing money, but it is.
Exactly. It was German terrorists, I think, that were in there. So, and it's interesting. You mentioned some great one-liners, and there are some great one-liners. One of my favorites, I'd like your opinion on, is this one, Sinatra. I think it's in the first 5 minutes of the movie. You're gonna flex your muscles and take notes. Penis has been cut off and is lying on the floor. Did you see that coming?
No. Yeah, and then he later says, "Oh, I can't remember. It's about get it wrapped up before somebody kicks it."
Exactly.
I was not seeing any.
Can you imagine that in Ocean's 11? Dino, your penis has been cut off. It's lying on the floor. I can't work that in naturally.
The whole penis amputation, really, I was like, wow, this film is not pulling any punches. Nope. We're just going right into it here. I was really impressed that they actually did all of that and they treated it seriously. It wasn't anything that they were making fun of. And I was like, I was just kind of surprised. And I mean, I think the first thing that came to mind was like, I'm really excited to see all of this. And then I was like, well, I don't know if that's the appropriate thing to say when we're talking about all of this, but still, like Sinatra in this film that just really felt really gritty. I was like that. I was just never expecting that walking into this movie.
Which leads us into a conversation about the portrayal of the 1968 homosexuals. There were some things in here I didn't understand, and there were some things that I was very, very impressed with. The things I didn't understand. At one point, they do a raid and it is a raid on it looks like a semi tractor.
It's like a moving truck lot or something.
Yes, it's like right. And the police show up in a parade of police cars, and they're all there with their flashlights. It's the middle of the night, and they start opening semi trailers. And in the semi trailers, it's just full of men in the dark, totally dressed. It looks very, very strange. So they open these semi trucks and, 50 guys will get out and they're all shocked. It looks like they'd been napping. And I know that they weren't napping. In my head, I know that they weren't napping. I think this particular sequence ran into the limits of what they could actually portray on screen and what would have been going on in those trucks that they were trying to communicate. But my goodness, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that sort of environment. Is that a thing that happens?
I don't know, but what I found interesting about that was it was something that I hadn't seen before. And I mean, again, going back to Stonewall riots in 1969, this is an era when homosexuality was still kind of thought of as a medical condition and they wanted to fix it. There were probably gay bars, but they were probably very hidden. And I think that what this shows is people were desperate for places to connect. And if it meant that they were going into the backs of box trucks to find some space, I guess that's what they were doing. And I don't know if I'm assuming that it probably was something that happened since they're portraying it here. But I found it to be kind of shocking that that's what they had to stoop to. It really kind of just was like one of those eye-opening things that also struck me as kind of how silly it all is. But I think the silliness of it also is because I think the film is doing a really interesting job of having this open conversation about homosexuality and how it was treated at the time. But also I think there's it's a good reference point for how Hollywood and society viewed gay people. Yeah. And they all look a little overly flamboyant and overly coiffed. And that's kind of what the world of homosexuality was at the time. And I think it's a little much. And I mean, they go into a gay bar later, or MacIver does, and it's like this really pink place and really sparkly and like, I don't know if it's exactly
definitely
not quite right, but hey, I applaud them for trying.
Well, I applaud them for trying and for muscling through a variety of positions on the perspective on homosexuality in this film. It was not black and white. You had Sinatra playing this character that, he was obviously sort of the heroic ideological lead, but was clearly written as, struggling with how to balance his own perspectives, the perspectives of the police force, which was largely anti-homosexuality, and the perspective of these women in his life. And, we in this particular sequence, we get to see a little bit more meat in the character of Detective Nestor, played by a young Robert Duvall, who I honestly didn't expect to be the guy to treat these men as he did in this lineup. And Sinatra has to slug him, and I think that is that was a fantastic opportunity for us to see how these in this sequence, how these men are struggling with their perspective on something that's really hard for them to integrate into their own lives. We get to see on the on slightly other end of the spectrum, get Jack Klugman, who is as Detective Schonstein, who's plays a little bit of a softer perspective. And then we get what was the guy who's ends up using like the Nazis as role models for getting confessions. This is a very broad range of perspectives on this police force. Yeah,
that was Al Freeman Jr. as Robbie, the rookie who comes in, and then of all people, the rookie African American who's using Nazi techniques to stripping down his the person that he's interrogating to get answers from him. It was a little shocking to see that he would go to that level, but I found it really interesting that these characters, it was a real variety of them, and that's, I think, what I really liked about this police force. And it would have been nicer if maybe maybe in the world of the gay men that there was a little more variety rather than just kind of all the flamboyant ones. But that being said, when we get to the end and we see McIver and he's like going down into that world, and because he's struggling with his own sexuality, and we see him, I was just floored that this film is dealing with this married man who's dealing with homosexuality, and he's struggling with it inside of himself. And you can see that he's just hating himself, but he's so drawn to it. And I was just like, this is really, it was just amazing to see. I loved how that whole thing played out.
Joe was interrogating, what was his name? The guy in the...
Felix?
Was that Felix?
Tony Musante, yeah.
That was an incredibly moving confession.
I was floored by it. It really hit me. I just found it heartbreaking and powerful. The way that Sinatra as Joe dealt with it, the way that he kind of like held his hand to calm him down and kind of draw this confession from him was amazing. I do think that there were times I was like, it's a little operatic. It's pretty big the way that Felix is delivering all this. And I kind of struggled with that. But I felt, for me, it ended up being right on the line. But it might have danced across the line a little bit, but it never too much to the point where I didn't still find it to be a powerful performance.
I agree with you, but this scene for me was like, it was one of those jokes that was funny, and then you tell it again and it's not funny, and then it's not funny like 25 times, and then by the 25th, 6th time, it's funny again. That was this scene for me. It was overkill, too much. Is sound gonna come out of the face as it's contorting up and down? And then it comes back around to me, and I just, like toward the end of the sequence, I just really connected with his pain and the performance that he was putting in. Again, it felt, as I love that you say operatic, it felt like a stage performance. It felt like he and Sinatra were deeply connected in that moment. That sequence was just made so much more powerful as a result of it. Even better, how conflicted Sinatra is written to be after the sequence, that he is really struggling with whether or not that was a coerced conviction, and nobody else cares. No one else on the force cares at all. I thought that was really special.
Yeah, it was. And it allows for, one, it brings us a horrifying electrocution scene that just was like awful to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And then it brings us back around at the end of the film as everything kind of comes together and all these puzzle pieces are put in place. And we see Joe reacting with the realities that, he put an innocent man to death. And he acknowledges that it was largely to get a promotion. And it's this moment for him that hits. And it's just kind of the way that it hits him, I found really powerful and shocking.
Not to belabor the fantastically Remick, but we neglected to cover earlier that her character sort of evolves as we get to know her to be a straight up nymphomaniac. And that is another thing I don't know that I would have expected. Maybe it's in the late 60s leaning into the 70s. That's when these characters are starting to get written, and portrayed on screen, I should say. But I didn't see that coming.
That was a surprise and an interesting element of her backstory, that this was something that he had dealt with her, that she could not stop herself from sleeping around. It was a real surprise. But what I loved the most about that was the way that their relationship continued, and the way that he still had connections to it, even though he could never see himself getting back together with her. He still had that bond with her, and they would still have conversations, and he would come to her and she would come to him. I really was I found it to be a wonderfully portrayed adult relationship that was full of complexities and elements that, you could totally see either way.
Now, it's interesting that, in fact, this movie where he is playing a gritty cop, having an affair and a marriage with, Karen, with wonderful Lee Remick in this movie, that they may have been having an affair during the production?
That is possible. It's very, very possible that did happen. He ended his relationship with Mia Farrow because of this film. Partly because of this film and largely because of her film, Rosemary's Baby, in which she was the lead. And that film was running long. She was supposed to be in this film as Mrs. McIver, Norma, that Jacqueline Bisset ended up playing. But it was Rosemary's Baby ran long, and she and he's like, no, you got to come work in this. And she's like, no. And he served her divorce papers. He didn't say anything to her. He just had someone serve her divorce papers on the set of Rosemary's Baby, because, you know, there are times that he's cool and there's times he's just, you know, all class. That's
that Mia Farrow can really pick him.
Oh my goodness. Yes, she can.
I'm sorry. That was below the belt. I apologize for that.
But yes, it is. Apparently, it is possible that he did end up having an affair with Lee Remick on this film, and interestingly, she did end up divorcing her husband, Bill Colleran, late 1968. So I don't know the story. I don't know if he might have been part of the reason for that.
So much drama. What do we know about the good Gordon Douglas? Apparently he was director in name only. Is that a fair characterization?
I mean, he's definitely a director who's done a lot of projects. I think on IMDb, he's got 99 directing projects listed. He started out with the, I think he actually started acting, but then he did some of the Our Gang series and did some stuff with Laurel and Hardy. And in the 50s, he did the absolutely wonderful giant ant movie, Them, that everybody should see because it's so great.
Brilliant.
And then in the early 60s, he did the wonderful In Like Flint. Yep. And but over the course of that, he did direct Sinatra, I think 4 times. And from what it sounds like, listening to the people talk about it on the commentary, he really was kind of a director who let Sinatra steamroll all over him and did whatever Sinatra wanted. And I don't know if a yes man is the appropriate term, or just saying that he just kowtowed to him a little bit, or just was like, yeah, sure. I don't know if he was just really easygoing, but people say, I don't think they say it was to the point where Sinatra directed the movie, but I think when it came to Sinatra doing what Sinatra was doing, that Sinatra did whatever he wanted to do in the movie.
It's just what Sinatra did.
Yeah. Well, and he didn't do rehearsals. He, and it's funny because there was a director who ran into him years later and caught him recording. He went to a recording, like Sinatra ran into him on the street and invited him to, hey, I'm going to be recording this album. Come listen. And he went, and the director watched as Sinatra recorded songs over and over and over again, trying to get it absolutely perfect. And afterward, they went out for a drink or something, and the director was just like, man, I'm so surprised that you did so many takes with every song, because I could never get you to do that many takes when we were making the movie. And Sinatra said, well, there's never been a lonely man sitting in a bar at 2 a.m. who is putting on a movie. And that was kind of his viewpoint. And I guess it goes to show that singing is really his love and what he saw as the important parts of his life. And I think acting was just something that he enjoyed to do, but never saw it as, never took it as seriously, even though I think he did deliver a great performance here.
Abby Mann penned the screenplay here. As I look at his credits, I honestly, I don't think I've seen anything else that Abby Mann had done but Judgment at Nuremberg. What's your sense of Abby Mann's structure of this thing?
Well, first, I think I'm largely like you. I've heard of Abby Mann, but I don't think I had ever seen anything except Judgment at Nuremberg. I think that is it, which was also based on his own story. So I can't get a good sense of the scope of Mann's career, but
he did a lot of Kojak. Oh, did he do a lot of Kojak?
Yes, indeed. But I do really like the way that the script was structured. At first, it took me by surprise, I guess. We've got this film that feels a little bifurcated, where you've got this first half of the story dealing with catching the killer of this gay man, and then they catch him and they electrocute him, and then we go into the second half of the film, and there's this suicide at the horse tracks, and then he's investigating that, and it turns into this big, political conspiracy, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, and who is Rainbow, and it's like, wow, I wasn't expecting it to be so split like this. And I was like, okay, well, I'll go with it because it still is intriguing. And then we get to that tape recording, and I was like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting it to tie it was maybe not as separated as Targets is, which is completely two different stories that just happen to come crash together at the end. This one is really just, the life of a police detective as he's investigating things that all happen to tie together. And to that end, I actually really liked how it went. It actually kind of reminded me a little more of like the LA Confidential type of structure.
Yeah, I had that feeling too. And I feel like LA Confidential is trying to do some very similar things, trying to tell the same sorts of stories about the police, the period of the police. We got a couple other folks we want to talk about in the cast before we move through it. It's an amazing cast, and it's an amazing cast of the period, we should say. But we have, in addition to Sinatra and Lee Remick, we have Ralph Meeker and Jack Klugman and Horace McMahon and Lloyd Bachner, who is fascinating as Dr. Roberts. And I really love their repartee, particularly in the beginning. And it's really fun to see that his son Hart Bachner was in Die Hard. I
actually love that. And that's one of those things that I never would have known if I hadn't actually watched this film.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at Hart Bachner, and he was Harry Ellis, and his face is super familiar, but I can't remember who. Oh,
Harry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bubby,
Hans. Bubby. I can give him to you.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's positively brilliant. So that was really wonderful. We've already mentioned Tony Musante as Felix, and Robert Duvall as Nestor. It was great to see him. Pat Henry as Mercedes. But Sugar Ray Robinson is the one that stood out to me as Kelly. I guess I didn't have a sense that Sugar Ray had done even as many film projects, TV projects as he had done. But lo and behold, he did.
And I think this was one of those things where he was buddies with Frank Sinatra, and Sinatra had him come on over. Hey, come on and be this guy in the bar. And I think that's exactly what happened.
And he shows up.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah. Obviously, we can't talk about Jacqueline Bisset only as a stand-in for Mia Farrow.
We can't.
We have to do more than that.
Yes.
So let's start with her wig.
Oh, yes. It's funny that they went with this hairdo, which obviously Mia Farrow popularized at the time. And I didn't hear anybody saying that they went with this wig because Mia was going to be in the part. But you kind of get that feeling for it when she shows up and that's her hairdo, and this backstory. It's like, oh, interesting. But I liked her. I thought I didn't think her part was as strong as I wanted it to be, especially considering some of the other elements that we had in the film. But I still enjoyed seeing her in the film, and this was, very right around the time that she was. I can't remember if it was right before this or right after this that she was doing Bullet, but it's like right around the same time because they both were 1968 films. And William Wyndham, we didn't mention him earlier, but as her husband, I really liked that internal struggle that he was really going through with this whole story and leading to committing murder over it. I really thought that was a powerful performance that he brought to the table here. And he was a very familiar face too. I didn't look at his credits to see what
Oh,
he'd been
gosh,
in.
you know, he was
the president in Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
That's right. That's where we need to know that. And you know, he was in To Kill a Mockingbird back in the day. We've watched that a bunch around here. He was in Uncle Buck. Look at that. 253 credits. I mean, the guy has a substantial career, not to mention a long-running part on Murder, She Wrote. He's Uncle Chuck in Sonic the Hedgehog, all 25 episodes. So if you're a big fan of that,
there it is. I think he's the boss. Looking at the advertising stuff in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. The one who we cut to at the very end of the credits, who's still sitting there.
Totally. He's George Wilson in Dennis the Menace. Mr. Wilson.
Wow.
Takes me back. Camera. Joseph Biroc.
Again, the way that they worked with the camera in this film, I was very excited. It felt fresh, and that was something that I really missed in the last film, and I was just thrilled that we had here. And he also worked on Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
It all comes back to the apes, Andy. Everything you need to learn about the world can be found in Planet of the Apes.
I firmly believe that.
This film has been scored by one of the very famous Jays.
Yes, one of the 10 Jays. Jerry Goldsmith. This is a soundtrack that I actually have had long before I ever watched the movie. It's a great score. It's got that just great, like the sax and just kind of the. It's very kind of that 60s neo-noir vibe going on through it. It just, I mean, I as soon as it kicks on with a fantastic first shot that's so disorienting, I was just like, oh, this is perfect. This is great music for this movie.
I totally agree. Could not agree more. I think it's amazing. I had not had it. It so quickly becomes the soundtrack to my day. You know, I walk mysteriously out of my office. I skulk darkly into the kitchen. It's just what it feels like to me. It's really fantastic. So,
and then you have those flashbacks with the great.
Exactly. Meanwhile, what did I do in the bathroom 5 minutes? No, don't go there. Don't go back there.
You'll be stuck there for half the movie.
We need to talk clearly about all of the awards that I'm sure that this movie won during award season.
You know, it's interesting. This is one of those films that was a popular movie, but I wonder if it's the subject matter or the genre that just didn't spark people to give it any nominations, because it didn't have any.
It had no nominations?
It didn't have a single nomination. Again, remember, this was an era where there was not nearly as many awards as there are today, where you have awards for the most nonsensical things today. But back then, it was really a limited number of awards. So, but looking at the Oscars, for example, my curiosity really struck me. Would there be any category that you would say, you know, I think I would nominate this for that category?
Well,
like, would you say Frank Sinatra, throw him in for an Oscar nomination?
Okay, now wait a minute. So are we talking about just category, or are we talking about that year? Are you going to test me on this in a minute?
Yeah, I'm looking at the films and the people that were nominated for Oscars in 1968 films, and I just wanted to see if where do we stand? Would we have put this in for a nomination, or are we good with what they went with?
Well, I don't know with what they went with.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. So, give me a category, and then we'll have that conversation.
Let's just say I would drop Frank Sinatra in as Best Actor. Let's say that.
So the winner that year was Cliff Robertson in Charlie, which I haven't seen, so I can't. This is going to be a tricky category, unfortunately. Yeah. Peter O'Toole was in The Lion in Winter. Ron Moody was in Oliver. Alan Bates was in The Fixer, and Alan Arkin was in The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. I've only seen The Lion in Winter and Oliver.
I've seen The Lion in Winter and The Heart is the Lonely Hunter. But I would still say that Sinatra stands up to those.
I think that I would really, now I'm curious to see the other three performances just so I can figure out who I'd cut, because I would feel like I would want to throw Sinatra in here.
What about Lee Remick as Best Actress?
Or supporting?
I don't know. I would say Jacqueline Bisset would be supporting.
Yeah, if it's Best Actress, Barbara Streisand in Funny Girl, which we've talked about. Mm-hmm. Katharine Hepburn in The Lion in Winter. This was that year where it was a tie between those two.
Yeah.
Joanne Woodward in Rachel, which we'll be talking about later in the year. Vanessa Redgrave in Isadora, and Patricia Neal in The Subject Was Roses. I haven't seen those three.
No.
I wouldn't take out Hepburn or Streisand.
No.
So I'd have to figure out, of Woodward, Redgrave, or Neal, who would I drop if I wanted Lee in. I don't know if I feel the need to throw Lee in, though.
All right. So that's all right.
Cinematography, I would definitely throw in.
Was the next one I was gonna throw your way. So Joseph Biroc is best cinematographer. Who else did we have up against that one? Lion in Winter, I assume.
No. Pasqualino DeSantis for Romeo and Juliet, which we will be talking about later in the year.
Yeah.
Harry Stradling Senior for Funny Girl, which we've talked about. Oswald Morris for Oliver, Daniel L. Pfapp for Ice Station Zebra, and Ernest Laszlo for Star. I haven't seen Ice Station Zebra or Star. Of the three, I don't know. I'm trying to remember the cinematography in Funny Girl, and if it struck me as, wow, I would definitely nominate that for cinematography. Romeo and Juliet, yes, I would probably leave that in there. Oliver, I'm a little wishy-washy on.
I think watching Funny Girl again, you would say that it deserves to be right where it is. It was solid. While some of it was, easily and naturally proscenium, they do some fascinating things, some fascinating choices around high angles and mirror shots and things that really develop your sense of kind of inner narcissism through camera. And I remember having a great time with that one.
Of those three, I would drop Oliver and throw this in instead.
What about music?
Yes. Good old Jerry Goldsmith. Let's see. Best music, The Lion in Winter won. Jerry Goldsmith was already nominated for Planet of the Apes. Lalo Schifrin was nominated for The Fox, Alex North for The Shoes of the Fisherman, and Michel Legrand for The Thomas Crown Affair. We're going to talk about that later in the year, along with Lion in Winter. I have seen those three. I haven't seen The Fox or The Shoes of the Fisherman, but all of these composers I really like. I am thrilled that Goldsmith got nominated for Planet of the Apes. I wouldn't take that out. Lion in Winter, it's a brilliant score. I think it deserved to win. Thomas Crown Affair I would leave in.
You think this is like too standard, dark jazz to stand up against some of those scores? Because I would swap this one out with Planet of the Apes in terms of Goldsmith score.
Wow. Well, I think that it's not, at the time, Planet of the Apes was such a unique original score that it was nominated because it was such a the wow factor of that's some of the most crazy music.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
To that end, I think it deserves the recognition. But you're right, this is the more listenable of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see your point.
Well, it's disappointing. My sense is that this movie was probably shunned, not because of any specific performances, but because of its overall package, that it pushed on some norms in potentially some uncomfortable ways. Yeah.
I think the genre too.
Yeah.
I think there are films that just don't get the recognition because it's a genre movie. And I think that's something that's always been going on. So, But then again, Planet of the Apes got a nomination for best score. So
how'd it do at the box office?
20th Century Fox gave Douglas $4.5 million to make his movie, which is about $31 million in today's dollars. Sinatra's film was released May 28, 1968, opposite the Yul Brynner, Charles Bronson, Robert Mitchum vehicle, Via Rides, and the counterculture cult classic Wild in the Streets. The movie did well at the box office, coming in at the 20th spot of the films of 1968. Bringing in $6.5 million or just under $45 million in today's dollars. That leaves the movie with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $122,000.
That surprises me that it even came in the top 20.
It was surprisingly popular. I don't know if it's because the book was so popular or what, but this, from everything I read, it was a big box office success and people really enjoyed it. It could be this was a lot of conversations of different types happening in the late 60s. And I think this was a film that allowed more variety of people to go to the movies and feel like they were seeing something that represented something other than what they were getting in the 50s.
I love it. And I love it so much, I think we should rank it.
I do too.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and you will see our list of all of the movies we have talked about on this show. Or you can swipe over in your show notes, tap the word flickchart, and you'll be taken straight to this movie where you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up to ours. Andy?
First up, we have The Detective or Fat City.
The Detective.
That's actually a great pairing.
Yes.
Make like a great double feature.
Absolutely, it would.
The Detective also, though. The Detective or Seven Samurai.
Oh,
I've
Andy.
got to go Seven Samurai. I know.
All right, I'm gonna go to the mat with it, and we'll just see. We'll just see what happens.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not gonna be hurt. Anyway,
I'm not either.
It's just a thought experiment that will forever determine our rankings of all the films forever and ever.
I may be a little hurt if you.
It may be a
will.
little hurt. That's okay.
See.
All right, here we go.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
1, 2,
3. Scissors.
Rock.
Scissors.
Rock.
All right. Clearly, the fates were in your corner. And that's okay. I feel good about that.
And that's okay. Yeah. The Detective or Mother?
The Detective. I'm going to go with The Detective.
I'm going to go with Mother on this one.
You can have it. That's good. At least I made my position known.
I think they're incredibly strong films in both cases.
Yeah.
The Detective or Inside Man?
I don't know. I feel like I need you to make a case.
Well, The Detective is a film I will be thinking about more. Inside Man is an absolutely fun ride. If it boils down to what I'm going to put on first, I'm going to say Inside Man.
I think I'm Inside Man. Okay, let's do it. Inside Man. That's it forever.
The Detective or High Noon?
Probably The Detective.
Yeah, there was a day I would. This is one that'll fluctuate on the day.
Yeah,
I'm The Detective on this one. The Detective or Adaptation?
Okay, maybe it's just my initial reaction to you saying the words adaptation that we haven't talked about it in some time. I am Adaptation.
I am absolutely, yeah. Great movie. The Detective or The Departed?
Oh, The Detective.
Yeah, I'll say, man, I really want to revisit The Departed because I keep wondering if my memory of it is too sullied now.
Possibly. Although, I had to rank it against Infernal Affairs, and Infernal Affairs takes it for me on that one. But definitely The Detective over The Departed.
Yeah. The Detective or M? I'm going to go with M.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Well, that lands The Detective at 171 on our chart. 171 out of 371, which is about 54%. It's in the top half, but it's not by much.
I'm disappointed. That feels low to me. Although in my own ranking, I ended up at 326 out of 1,039, which comes in at about 69%, and that also feels low to me. It makes me think something is broken in movies.
Yeah, I was struggling also with my ranking, but mine landed at 1,006 out of 4,041, which is 75%. So that means, on Letterboxd, I should be giving it 4 stars, which is what I'm giving it.
That is interesting. For me, the algorithm says that I should be giving it 3.5. I respectfully disagree with the algorithm, and I'm going to go with 4 solid stars and a like on Letterboxd too.
Absolutely with a like. It was such a delight watching this movie. And I don't think it's only because it's on the heels of Coogan's Bluff, which is
let's just
the
say
unfortunate
it was
position.
a hell of a setup.
It really was. But I was so thrilled that this was a film that I had heard of, but I knew nothing about. And I walk into it and it felt so fresh and surprising. And I'm so happy that I have now seen this film.
Totally agree. This was terrific. And now we're getting close to the end of our big 1968 crime series. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting finale to this series. We're going to be ending it with a much different type of film. We're jumping over to Italy and we're looking at Danger Diabolic, directed by Mario Bava. This is the action crime comedy. Let's hope it does better than the Coogan's Bluff action crime comedy. But it's the Italian film that I've heard it's a crazy film. I'm looking forward to checking it out. and seeing what this wacky movie's all about. So that is the next film that we're going to be looking at.
I can't wait to do it because I have heard Italians have really a corner of the market of all three of those things: action, crime, and comedy. Put them together, I feel like something really special is going to come out of it.
Well, if you want to hear more of us, but you can't wait until next week's show, you can support us over on patreon.com/thenextreel and get access to our exclusive members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee.
We talk about movie news and new trailers, plus we go head-to-head in our weekly challenge, in which we put together lists of movies related in some way to the movie we're discussing that week.
There are all sorts of other goodies, too, if you support us at different levels. Just head over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
You can learn more about us and check out the detailed show notes at thenextreel.com.
You can subscribe for free in your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at The Next Reel.
And if you want to get into the conversation yourself, join our Discord server for a whole lot of movie chat with movie lovers around the world. You can find the link to join in the show notes or over on the website.
The Next Reel couldn't happen without the hard work of Stephen Smart running Instagram.
Ben Lott runs all things Twitter.
And thanks to Eli Catlin, who graciously allows us to use his song Ragtime Instrumental as the theme to this show. You can find out more about Eli on his SoundCloud page.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon sometimes doeth.
Sometimes they doeth.
Sometimes they do.
In this case, I will say I'm impressed to see that there are no 1-star reviews.
Yeah.
But we do have a couple of 2-star reviews. One that is I actually think it's quite good, so I'm not going to read it.
Well, I think they meant to put it in the higher ratings, but they might have gotten their stars a little confused.
Right. And it's quite verbose and thorough, and really, you just listen to the show. Who are we kidding? You got everything you need out of that. But I would like to share this 2-star review from Bernadette back in 2010. It's interesting. She says with a 2 stars, my husband said that the detective was not as good as Lady in Cement, nor Tony Rome.
Oh my.
And it's, that's it. And it's fine. But the comments really are really what's so perfect. Dude, I mean, there are a couple, and they all really have kind of the same bent as J.E. Bloomer, who replies, yes, it's a pity that husbands wield such raw power over the cinematic sensibilities of wives.
I love that, Bloomer. Thank you for
that.
Good. Oh, well, I've got a 3-star. You took the good 2-star. 3 stars by Christine C., who says, no heroes. In most films that I view, I prefer someone to cheer for, and this movie does not go along with that idea. It's average in all other areas. Too bad. Great cast.
No heroes.
Christine needs a hero.
There's no heroes in the big, dark, dirty world, Christine. Wake up.
Well, and she clearly has not listened to enough Tina Turner. Because we don't need another hero.
She doesn't even need a hero.
That's right.
You know why, Christine? Because the heroes are dead. All the heroes are dead. It's 1968. Get a binky. Cry yourself to sleep because heroes are dead. Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great movies, so many great conversations. But it's a lot of work. Producing this show week after week does require a lot behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We had some great films in Season 8 that started their lives as books or plays, and you can find all of them on our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
That's the site where listeners can find links to purchase all the source material behind the adapted films we covered, from Season 1 up through our current season.
For part of Season 8, we had a series celebrating the 50th anniversary of films from 1968.
We talked about 2001 and 2010 for our Odyssey series, both adapted from Arthur C. Clarke's novels. Man, the second one was so much better than the first, right?
Don't you even get me started. Need I bring up Under the Cherry Moon again?
Yes, also so much better.
Wait, no, that's not what I...
Planet of the Apes kicked off its series based on the novel by Pierre Boulet.
We covered Danger Diabolic and The Detective, adapted from novels for our 1968 crime films.
Wait, wasn't that The Detective the prequel to Die Hard?
They were both written by Roderick Thorpe, and yes, it's the same character in the books.
I can't believe they even asked Sinatra if he'd be in Die Hard. That would have been weird.
Once Upon a Time in America was part of our Leone Once Upon a Time trilogy, adapted from Harry Gray's novel.
And we looked at 1968 Best Picture nominees The Lion in Winter, Rachel, Romeo and Juliet, and Oliver!
We also had an Ingrid Bergman series with adaptations like Spellbound, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Murder on the Orient Express, and Gaslight.
We haven't talked about Gaslight.
Stop gaslighting me!
Dive deeper into these books and more adapted films at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations that we've covered on all the Next Reel family of podcasts and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.